this economic, I must call it, inactivity.
Yeah.
So right now we did see the Minister of Finance, Dr. Walia Ngandu. You know, he did announce some of the measures that are put in place to mitigate, some of the relief measures that are put in place to mitigate the economic impact of the COVID-19. So broadly, according to your own view, do you feel the measures are sufficient enough to mitigate the economic impact of COVID-19?
No, they are not. Actually, I was very disappointed in the measures that he announced, because the only people that are going to benefit from the measures that were announced are, one, non-compliant taxpayers, because what he waived were penalties and fees and interest on non-payment. So the people who don't comply with tax laws are the only ones who are going to benefit. If you comply, it is of no benefit to you. You understand? What he should have done is suspend some of the taxes. For example, withholding tax on rentals. That would have helped a lot of the small businesses that are renting. It would have helped those that are renting in the malls, and right now their shops are closed, you know. Secondly, the line of credit that was announced from Bank of Zambia, the 10 million, because those are really the only economic measures. There's nothing else.
Is it of liquidity?
Yeah, wait, 1 minute. So now that again will only benefit the bigger companies who already are in a position to survive this much better. Because you ask any local Zambian business person if they have any loans with any bank. Most of the local businesses that have loans with the bank, either they've already lost those businesses because, you know, they cannot keep up with the payments. And secondly, even with that credit facility, you are still going to be paying at interest rates that are quite high. You know, because the Zambian financial market, the interest rates are high. So something that could have helped is what Stanbic Bank has done on its own as a bank. They've said to their clients that are owing that they've put a moratorium on debt, on repayments, and they've also stopped accruing interest on the loan, the benefit is that those who are owing money to Stanbic right now, they are now in the same position as before COVID-19, so that even after this COVID-19 ends, it will be much easier for them to get back into shape, because they would not be worried about losing their business or worrying about the loan, the interest on the loan becoming much larger by the time the COVID-19 goes away. So what Stanbic have done, we should have done at the national level. You understand? Then we should also be the other thing we should be doing, it's good that the minister alluded to it, allocated, I think it's 2 billion kwacha towards payment of debt arrears. But that's nothing. He should have put more money into paying off these arrears than the money he put for paying off road contractors who are Chinese. Let's face facts. How many road contractors do you know in Zambia currently that are Zambians? It's Chinese. And Chinese companies, like any foreign investor, will transmit the money back to China. They're not going to keep the money in Zambia. You see? So what the problem is that this COVID-19 has exposed the hypocrisy and the unfairness of Zambian economic policy over the years, where this economy benefits more the foreigners than locals. You see? And that's where the problem is. So if this government was serious, that they really want to ensure that businesses don't fail, as the minister himself said the other day, they really need to be creative. The same way he was saying that the private sector should be creative to find new ways, the government also should be creative. You cannot be, the first measure you do in the economy is to benefit non-compliant taxpayers. That doesn't make sense. You know, you're supposed to benefit those who are compliant, those who are struggling. Bars, restaurants are closed, and we know that these are businesses run mainly by Zambians. Okay, the airline industry, we got 2 Zambian airlines, Mahogany and Proflight. I mean, if nothing is done, they will be dead in the water. They will not be able to recover. Just today I was reading Rwanda Air has reduced some salaries for all their workers from between 10% and 65%.
I want us to maintain this conversation firstly to the measures that the Minister of Finance did allude to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 on our economy, but also coupled with that, we did have a statement coming through from the President. You spoke about creativity, and one of the things that I think we should give kudos to government for is the fact that the President instructed the Ministry of Commerce and Trade and Industry to ensure that chain stores around the nation prioritize local products from our domestic farmers. Don't you think that we should give kudos to government for this particular directive?
No, because we have a law already in place in this country. The Citizens Economic Empowerment Act is very clear on the fact that you have to give a certain amount of business to locals. In the construction sector, we have the policy already, 20%, that 20% of contracts should go to Zambians. So why does it need for the president to make? So he's making a directive of something which is already policy.
Yes. It's good that
so
you're adding
issue
numbers.
Is, the issue
I
is
love
to
the fact
implement.
that you're adding numbers to your submission, Mr. Simumba, that 20% of that should be allocated to our locals. But I think amidst this coronavirus, we do know for a fact that we can no longer import.
Correct.
We can no longer import. That means that business is now restricted to the locals. Don't you think now that the president has validated this by giving this particular directive, don't you think the lives of our local farmers will be uplifted? Yes,
but what is the modality to ensure that this happens? Because we have a law. I've told you, we have the law, Citizens Economic Empowerment Act. It's a law.
It is a law.
Yes. So if we have failed to implement the Citizens Economic Empowerment Act, what makes you think that by the president making this pronouncement that it will be implemented? Let's be serious in this country. What COVID-19 has done is that it has exposed, like I said, the hypocrisy of government, because we have all these things in place, but nobody makes sure that these things are done. Who in the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry is going to make sure that Pick and Pay, ShopRite, Food Lovers Market and all these guys are buying local products? Who's going to make sure that that happens? And what mechanism has been put in place? Before the president made this announcement, isn't it that a week and a half ago, the government of Zambia and the government of South Africa met to ensure that products coming from South Africa can be facilitated during this COVID crisis? They met. It was even announced. And the minister was very proud to say, we have met with the South Africans and, we're going to make sure the supply chain. Let's just be serious with what we're doing. If you're serious about empowering local Zambians, you have to put it in such a way that these supermarket chains don't have any mechanism to refuse. Because you try and ask any Zambian who supplies ShopRite, who supplies Pick and Pay, the difficulties that they have. Yeah. Difficulties in getting paid, difficulties in getting appropriate orders. They'll be told, oh, sorry, we cannot give you an order because you cannot supply 100 of these particular items, for instance. But a South African coming from across the border with 50 of the same items will be given that order. It's not right. Even in the mines, it's the same problem. How many Zambians are doing business with the mines? Same problem. So we really need to be very serious with what we're doing, okay, as a country. And this has exposed the need to improve supply chain domestically. Yes,
I love the fact that you had brought in the economic issue here when you talked about the fact that there are local people that run saloons, bars, have been closed down. What are some of the measures that will help them? The president on Friday did make a directive that the Ministry of Finance should identify and consolidate all available resources that can be distributed to small businesses run by the youth, the women groups, and the vulnerable. Don't you think really this is a step in the right direction to answer your question that, look, there are no measures that will help the people that run these small businesses?
Yes, but we need to be very detailed in that. In this country, we have this Zambia Chamber of Small, Medium and Business Associations, ZACSIMBA. It's an association that represents a lot of small businesses and medium-sized businesses across the country. Okay, we have the Women in Business Federation. We have ZACI. We have Zambia Association of Bank. All these associations know exactly who their members are and the issues that are facing their members. Okay, Now, for the other businesses, for example, the other businesses that operate at markets, again, you have market committees, you have market associations. All these are available for the government as a first step to say, okay, could you give us data on exactly how much? Because some people have even lost their capital. You understand me? You know, others, it's just that they've lost revenue stream, but they may still have their capital intact, all right? Others are completely at zero. They've just lost their income, they've lost their capital, you know, it's the fact, it's happening, all right? So you need to have a structured process where you are able to say, okay, those who have suffered loss of capital, what is the average that is needed to get them back? So, for example, let's just take a simple example. You run a bar, okay? And right now, all the bars are closed, right? Now, maybe you have what, 5, 6, let's say you have 6 employees, you know, maybe 4 waitresses, 2 barmen, maybe a cleaner, okay? That's 7 people that you've employed, right? Now, right now you're closed. So, are you able to continue to pay the salaries of those 7 workers?
You're unable.
You're unable, right? So, that's a job loss. However, if you have some extra savings, you might say to your workers, which I've heard from, because I talk to business people all the time. Some of the business people have told me they've put their workers on 70% salary. Others are saying we've put them on 50%, and when we start again, we'll call them back in. So let's say you say, okay, I can manage 50% at least in the next 3 months. But what if this thing goes beyond 3 months? It means that but if this thing goes beyond 3 months, by the time it's coming, you need money to be able to pay the workers, right? You need money to stock up, to buy stock, which you can resell, right? So all these are issues, and these are real issues, okay? Now, most governments across Africa, well, let's not even talk about Europe. No, let's just talk about Africa. Ghana, for example. Senegal, for example. Mozambique, just yesterday, has received approval for about $300-something million. The DRC has received approval for about $321 million. Okay? Ghana has received the highest, $1 billion. Okay? Now, what is Ghana doing? Ghana has immediately increased salaries of all public health workers by 50%. 50% increment, salaries. They're not even talking about allowances, just salaries they've increased for all public health workers. Secondly, they've established a fund, all right, to recapitalize Ghanaian businesses, okay, from the smallest to the medium-sized, okay? And this capital fund is going to give what they call interest-free, okay, which means you just repay what you're given. If you're given 2,000 kwacha, repay the 2,000 kwacha. You understand me? Not 2.5, not whatever. Interest-free. Because, you know, it's very difficult for companies to recover if you don't give them cheap finance, all right? Thirdly, for vulnerable people, you know, vulnerable households, those who are already, maybe they receive social cash transfers, you know, maybe they're unemployed, you know, self-employed, no payment of water and electricity bills for the next 3 months. The government will pay that off.
Will pay that off.
You know, okay? Ghanaians in the diaspora who've lost their jobs, they are being given a certain amount of money just to help them carry through. Because a lot of people have lost jobs in Europe, America, isn't it? And there are a lot of Africans living in those countries.
We'll discuss the way forward, really, and in comparison to what, you know, our peers, the other countries are doing to ensure that they mitigate the economic impact of COVID-19.
Let me give one last example. For vulnerable people. South Africa has established food banks where they're distributing foods. Even a small country like the Gambia, where I'm working at the moment, I was just received the report yesterday. They are distributing food to all the vulnerable households, widows, orphans, okay, unemployed people. They're old people. They're distributing food.
No. To meet their target, Mr. Samumba, the private sector is scaling down their labor force. Do you think this is a, you know, direction in the, you know, it's a step in the right direction to go amidst the COVID-19?
They've got no choice, my friend.
And exactly,
If your business
what is the other alternative, really, you know, for the private, you know, sector to maintain its workers, to maintain, you know, the fact that the economic wheels should be running? What should they put in place?
They need money. They need money. They need to. So, for example, there are some. What Ghana has done, for instance, is that Ghana has provided financing to companies to industries in Ghana to manufacture all the required medical supplies. So Ghana is manufacturing masks, protective equipment, you know, the reagents for the testing, you know. In fact, in Kenya, they've even started making ventilators. They used to make, it's an assembly plant for cars. They've converted it. They're making ventilators. Now, here in Zambia, what does the government do? It reduces duty for imports of these things. So which means you're not encouraging anybody to manufacture. Why not? That money you are wasting to say you're reducing imports. Reduce imports of the inputs. So, for example, like what they did with ethanol, you know, the alcohol, that was good because that will encourage people to locally manufacture hand sanitizer and other things. But do the same thing for across the board. You mean we can't produce masks in Zambia? We've got factories in Copperbelt that produce a protective wear, isn't it? For the industries, for the mining industry. You know, the mining industry, sometimes to go underground, you need the face mask. Right?
Face mask.
Yes, face masks, but those are industrial. But I'm sure those people who make those things can easily convert. We've got companies in Copperbelt who make safety boots, safety gloves, and all these things. Who make these safety overalls, isn't it? You mean they can't convert to start making this protective equipment for our nurses and doctors? You know, the full dress where you're covered fully, and then you've got this thing, this screen, and the mask. We can manufacture that, but it requires government having a deliberate policy to say, okay, this 58 billion kwacha we've allocated for COVID-19 emergency funding, let's ensure that at least 50-60% of this money reaches Zambian hands. You see? That's what we need.
No, the mining sector is one of the largest contributor, you know, to our treasury, and also it's the largest, you know, employer. Just last year, it employed about 30,000 miners. Well, let's look at the extent to which the coronavirus has an impact on the fact that you spoke about the fact that these sectors need money for them to run. But let's speak about the mining sector. What threat does the coronavirus really place on this important sector that contributes a large amount to our treasury and employs a number of miners?
Yeah, the biggest risks for the mining sector at the moment, actually, the biggest domestic risks for the mining sector are two. And then the biggest risk in terms of global, which they have no power to control, is the price of copper. Okay? Now, the main buyer of copper internationally is China. Okay?
Yeah.
And then followed by Japan, and then Europe, India. These are the major buyers of copper because they buy copper in order to manufacture, copper wire, catalytic converters, those that are used for these electric cars and all those things. So they use copper to manufacture TVs. Copper is found in almost everything because it's a very good insulation. If you remember your chemistry,
science,
exactly,
exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, so that risk is very difficult for the mines to do anything about it. Okay. Yeah. And we know that the price of copper has been fluctuating, so it has had an impact on the Zambian mining industry. Okay. Number one, because it has reduced the demand for copper, which means that our mining sector is unable to produce as much copper as they used to, because at the current price, they would not be making as much profit. Some of them are still making profit, but others, such as the older mines like Mopani, are finding it difficult because they have a higher cost structure than compared to First Quantum, Lumwana and Kesia.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the two domestic risks, this is where now the government and the mining industry need to sit down together around the table and find a best way to mitigate and find a way to meet each other halfway to ensure that the mining industry can continue. Number one is this problem of them getting their inputs from South Africa. All right? Now, we know that now this COVID-19 has exposed that our economy is so highly dependent on imports across the board. Whether it's imports to satisfy you and me to eat our food every day, or whether it's imports for industry, we are still highly dependent on imports, particularly coming through South Africa.
Yeah.
Now, you know that South Africa has put restrictions, okay, due to the lockdown.
Exactly.
So these inputs have been coming in slow. The mining industry is a very capital intensive, meaning they use a lot of machinery. You understand me? Okay, even though they have a lot of workers, miners, they use a lot of machinery. And this machinery requires constant maintenance. You understand me? For them to operate at an optimal basis, what we call max at full capacity, right? Where they are maximizing the benefit to them. Okay?
Exactly.
Yeah. So these machines need spare parts. They need spare parts. They need things to be changed regularly.
Indeed.
That is why it's such a big industry, right? So they're having difficulties receiving these goods, right? Secondly, the mining industry in Zambia, across the world actually, it's not just in Zambia, similar to the oil industry, is dominated by high-level technical skills, right? That come from all over the world.
Indeed.
So you've got people who work in the mining industry in Zambia from Australia, from South Africa, from Peru, from China, from India. You understand me? You know what's happening right now? You can't travel, isn't it?
You can't.
You can't travel. Whether you're coming from America, Australia, whatever, you can't. So a lot of the mines are struggling because their skilled manpower is not able to travel. Again, teaches us a lesson. We should improve skills development of Zambians so that this mining sector doesn't have to rely on foreigners. Okay? So those are the two biggest issues the mining sector is facing. Okay, and finally, the other issue now is,
really,
is on the tax.
You've mentioned something
issue.
very important, and I think can I just chip in something so that I had initially prepared it for a later time, but because you've mentioned this very important thing, don't you think now it's justifiable really for Mopani's, Mufulira, and Kitwe mines to go under care and maintenance?
The justification comes from them. Okay.
But according to what you've explained, really,
from my
your argument is consistent with what
yes,
the
that's
CEO
the argument.
of Mopani. Yes, which
that's
presenting.
That is the argument the CEO of Mopani has made, right? Yeah. The one thing we should all understand, when Mopani says they're putting the mine on care and maintenance, they're not saying they're closing down the mine or closing down operations.
My question, Mr. Simumba, is
they are temporarily suspending.
Is it justifiable the decision to put the mine under care and maintenance? With your explanation, coming from the background of your explanation, do you think it's justifiable? Their cause is justifiable?
I think that the government should have used the opportunity to get some concessions from Mopani in order to keep the mine going. I think it is better. It is in the interest of us as Zambians to not allow that mine to temporarily suspend operations. It will have a great impact. Mopani produces a lot of copper. It's an important employer in that whole area. I was listening to my brother Anthony Mumba, the MP for that area, complaining that, look, the bulk of the jobs that will be lost if Mopani closes down are people living in his constituency, Thousands of people living in Kantanshi, it's Kantanshi, yes, Kantanshi in Mufulira, are dependent on the Mopani. And remember that it's not just about direct employment, it's also about the linkage to the local economy, suppliers, the people who supply, the contractors. There are a lot of contractors who work for Mopani who now have no contract. They're out of work. So, for me, I think this 3 months, the government has managed to agree with Mopani that Mopani gives 90 days notice. In these 90 days, I would hope that calm minds would prevail. Look, we have an emergency, right? It's a global emergency. It is not anyone's fault. It's not Mopani's fault. It's not the government of Zambia's fault. All right? We have an emergency, a public health emergency. All right? We cannot start now interrogating issues of ownership, are the mines benefiting Zambians? We can't interrogate that now. because it's an emergency. In an emergency, we need to come together.
Yeah.
You can't start issuing threats. You know, for instance, the way they arrested the CEO when he was trying to
leave
fly out,
the
that
country,
is wrong. That is completely wrong. You don't behave like that.
I-
We are in an emergency. So I would say to the government, my advice to the government would be,
Just
sit
by
down
the
with
way,
Mopani.
I have not, yes, and I've not received, an absolute answer from you, Mr. Samumba. That's a very, crucial question.
Is it justified?
Is it justifiable?
They're a business.
So it's justifiable.
Yes, they're a business. And if they're making losses, why would you force a company that's making losses to continue to operate?
We'll come back to that later. To what extent do our economic and social challenges depend on the assistance from outside as a country?
Highly dependent. We have been exposed, my friend. This country right now is sitting on an external debt of $11.2 billion, an additional $5 billion of domestic debt. So this country is sitting on close to $17 billion in debt, and it continues to grow. All right? Now, to dismantle this debt, we will need some outside help. We have no choice in the matter. And the more time we take to get this help, the worse the situation will become. And this COVID-19 emergency has exacerbated the situation. It has opened the Pandora's box in terms of the Zambian economy.
But really, in his statement, the Minister of Finance did make mention of the fact that they are working out, a program that they will engage IMF with to get the loan. To what extent, really, with this money, peradventure it was given to us, to what extent will it, afloat again the local businesses? You see, again, it depends on the program. You understand me? It depends on how you design the program. All right? We can take a leaf from Senegal. Senegal has designed a fantastic program for the money that they've gotten from the IMF. The number one priority is to resuscitate the domestic economy. And for me, even if we just got $1.5 billion, which is the current amount in dollars of domestic arrears, even if we just got $1.5 billion to pay off all the suppliers to the government and the contractors, that would boost the economy tremendously. We've been struggling lately to get, grants from the IMF. What would you attribute as the major reason as to why?
There's a lack of transparency from the Zambian government. Okay, this lack of transparency has been ongoing for a long time. It's not something that Dr. Walyangandu started. No, it started way back. There's been a total lack of transparency in terms of what our actual debt is. Even I don't know if you recall, a year or so ago I was here, and yes, when Kalani Muchima was interviewing me, and I remember last year I was saying, look, I did the research on the debt, Chinese debt to Zambia, and I found that close to $2 to $3 billion of Chinese debt was not recorded officially by the government of the Republic of Zambia, and to this day I've been vindicated, because now when you look at the level of Chinese debt, it's close to $5 billion of Chinese debt alone. China is now Zambia's #1 creditor. All right, the rest are commercial debts, and the euro bonds and what. So one thing the Zambian people need to understand: we qualified to become a lower middle income country. All right, about in 2000 and what? I think it was 2011, just before the change of government. All right. So which meant that Zambia was no longer eligible, and is no longer, even today, we are no longer eligible.
A lower or middle income country.
Lower middle income.
Yeah.
So which means we're not eligible for this grant and what we call concessional funding, right? Which these poorer countries get. The same facility which the IMF has provided support to countries like DRC and others, Malawi and others. So we no longer qualify. However, we do qualify for the higher level financing, but that requires agreeing a program with the IMF. Ghana has just come off that program successfully. Today Ghana has the highest growth rate in Africa. Today Ghana is able to proudly manufacture all they need for their public health emergency. And they've received the highest amount of credit under the emergency COVID response $1 billion.
$1 billion.
Yes, $1 billion. So if Ghana can get $1 billion, we can get 1.5 billion. But we have to be transparent. We have to be transparent. We have to show the IMF that, look, this is where we have trouble, okay? Now, if you can help us, this is what it will do to boost the economy. And the easiest way you can show that is to boost the Zambian business people, because the Zambian companies will invest their money back into the Zambian economy. They will not take it out. Where are they going to take it? Because today, with this COVID crisis, you can't even fly to Switzerland to go and check, to put money in the Swiss bank account or anything like that. You know, you have to, they will invest it back into the Zambian economy. So we need to, the only way you can stimulate the economy is to boost the economy, put money back into businessmen's hands, okay? These, you know, we've got a lot of Zambians who've been doing subcontracts, you know, doing small contracts, but decent, but they're not being paid. I have friends of mine who've been waiting 3 years. Today, as I was coming, I received an inbox from a gentleman who said to me, Trevor, you know, you're going to talk about the impact. This government has prayed that the government pays me. They haven't paid me for 3 years. You know what that does to you, to your business?
Yep.
You haven't been paid for 3 years? Honestly, it is criminal.
Yep.
So for me, that should be the #1 priority for this minister.
So we should definitely, you know, come up with a program that we enable us to
come up with a
get
program.
something from the IMF.
Yes.
But really, you agree with me, Mr. Simumba, that you know, some of the policies that we have with the IMF haven't really worked very well for Zambia in terms of you know, them, you know, harshly you know, affecting our workers in a bad way. For example, the recruitment, you know, the recruitment and the wage freezes as a result of the you know, of the borrowed monies that we get from the IMF. Don't you think really there's need to come up with a program that will not hurt us in the future?
Let me correct one thing.
Yeah.
We haven't borrowed from the IMF. It's not the IMF that has been lending to Zambia, okay? And it's not the IMF that advised Zambia to borrow. You know, this thing, let's stop this thing of putting all the blame on the IMF. This is just politics. The truth of the matter is the economic problems that Zambia is facing today are as a result of bad economic policy and management by the government. Nothing else. So stop that. Secondly, it was because of the IMF that we were able to get out of our debt crisis and structure adjustment program to become a lower middle income country. Even for us to get over HIPIC, you know, we used to be called a highly indebted poor country. We came out of HIPIC in 2005. We were on an IMF program, okay? So the issue is the government has to develop a program. We had a recovery plan that Minister Mutati formulated.
Indeed.
Where is it? Where is it? We developed an austerity plan. Where is it? Who has it been implemented? Can you blame the IMF for us not implementing our own
and all these programs really that you've mentioned were meant for us to disbandle some of our huge debt.
Yes.
Do you think the Patriotic Front government has the muscle enough to disbandle our debt?
They have the muscle, but they don't have the political will. That is the problem. They have the capacity. They know what needs to be done.
Well, where are they failing then?
They don't have the political will. That's the point. You understand? To achieve, listen, why did Ghana successfully implement? Even with a change of government, Ghana maintained. Okay? The person who started the program with the IMF was Mahama. President Mahama. Yeah. He lost the election. Nana Akufo-Addo came in. Nana Akufo said, no, we're still going to carry on, but he put a strict deadline. He said, I want us to get off this IMF program within 1.5 years. Okay? And they managed to do that. And you know, today, when you go to Ghana, Ghana has more than enough power. In fact, they are losing money because they've got too much power. They're generating so much power because they implemented so many projects, energy projects, power projects, using support from the World Bank, IMF, even from China. Ghana has good relations with China. They borrow from China, but they manage their debt properly.
And we don't. All right. So let me officially open the phone lines. that our viewers are able to come through and give us their contributions and their comments on 0978 594682 is the number that you'll be coming through and giving us all your comments and your contributions on. We're discussing, the economic impact of COVID-19. My guest is an economic and trade expert, Mr. Trevor Smumba. And, we're discussing some of the pertinent issues that are affecting our country amidst this pandemic, the COVID-19. I asked you a question earlier before we can begin to pick our calls. Yes. I'd asked you a question to whether, the Patriotic Front government, has got enough muscle to ensure that they get Zambia out of this debt. And you said, yes, they do have, but the political will is not there. Would you agree that currently, we are in debt distress?
Yes, we are. We are in debt distress, getting close to the stage of a crisis and a default. If nothing is done over the next 3-4 months, this country is going to default on its debt.
Besides the political will, what are some of the practical steps we can take to ensure that we disbandle this debt that we have?
The government already knows. Number one, stop digging. Minister Mutati, when he was minister, I remember when he announced the budget, I think 2017 budget, he said, we need to stop digging the hole, okay? But he was removed. Mrs. Monakate came. She said, look, we need to, Mrs. Monakate was the first Minister of Finance to admit that China was #1 creditor. And she announced figures at that time, 28% of our debt was China.
Let me just patch in a call up as you continue. All right, 0978594682 is the number that you're calling us and giving us your contributions on. And those that are joining us via Facebook, yours is the Ask Muvi TV Facebook page. We are streaming live, and you can give us your comment and your contribution via that particular platform. Director, please just make sure that the phone is also that people are able to come through and give their comments on. As the director is fixing our call-in line, you were speaking about the fact that,
yes.
Is it?
Mutati said, stop digging the hole.
Yes.
So the first thing is, let's stop borrowing, number one. Two, we need accurate figures of our overall debt. Okay? Who do we owe? What is the maturity, the years we have to repay that debt?
Repay the date.
Okay?
Let me catch in this caller. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, who's on the line and where are you calling us from?
I'm calling you from Luano District.
Luano District.
Wow.
Who is on the line?
Good evening.
This is the Winter Mubanga calling you from Luano District in Central Province.
All right. I have Mr. Smumba, on the program tonight. What is your contribution or your question?
Oh, needs to.
If you can reduce the volume on your TV set, we'll appreciate. Right, so when you call in, kindly reduce the volume on your TV set because if you are watching and the volume is high, we are receiving feedback. Let me pick this call. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening. All right, 0978594682 is the number that you are calling and giving us your contributions regarding the topic we have at hand. We're discussing the economic impact of COVID-19. My guest is Mr. Trevor Smumba. Hello, good evening.
Hello?
Who's on the line and where are you calling us from?
Yes, this is Noah calling you from Kafue.
Mr. Noah from Kafue. How is Kafue this evening?
No, Kafue is okay this evening. At least it didn't cause any case for the COVID-19, but today and yesterday we are excited.
We praise God for that. Give us your contributions.
To your guest and our guest, Mr. Smumba, I want to thank you for that explanation. And in line with what you have said, I think mine is a contribution. It's true that we need to move fast because if that is a default sometimes we can have really a challenge. But we hope the government will quickly move in and arrest the situation because the COVID-19 was honestly has different impact. And then we all know that we are not sure as to when the pandemic will stop. And by then, maybe the effects will have been devastating. But the government of the day, of course, we know there must be a formula to make sure that the economy is back on track. Thank you so much for the explanation. I think I've taken one of the things. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming through, Mr. Noah.
Thank you.
Well, let me just pick some calls so that you'll be able to respond to them collectively. as they come. 0978594682 is the power line. You're coming through and giving us your contributions on economic impact of COVID-19 is what we're discussing. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening. Yes,
Hello, good evening.
who's on the line and where are you calling us from?
I'm calling you from Chesari.
From
Chesali. Ah, wow.
Yes.
Fantastic.
who is on the line?
I'm Chirufia, calling you from Chesari.
Mr. Chilufia, please go on with your contribution.
Mr. Sigumba.
Yes, please.
Hello.
Hello, yes, I can hear you.
Hello, Mr. Sigumba, are you getting me?
Yes.
Yes, what about if you have to say this is the mining sector? Hello.
Yes.
Yes, go on.
I'm thinking the only way we can help our economy is let us try to improve the agriculture sector. Because if you look at the agriculture sector, where Zambia is sitting.
Okay.
Yes. We hear you. Okay. That's a good point.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Chilufia.
You need to continue.
All right. We hear you. All right. Thank you so much. I would just appeal to our callers that are catching us, within Zambia and across the board that you reduce the volume on your TV set once you call us.
Connects, yeah.
Hello, good evening.
Hello?
Yes, who's on the line and where are you calling us from?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Who is on the line and where are you calling us from?
Madam,
Yeah, I'm quiet.
Ma'am, kwa ni wanani? Tuana na wanani? Ma'am, kwa ni wanani walipa phone? Bakalenga. Mletu mina kufuma kwisa?
Kumbala. Ah, muli uli Kumbala. Muli uli Kumbala. Okay, it's not mambo there.
Spell contribution by Mr. Kalenga. Mkwe.
Kwamba bali kufundilia kukana n'obwalwa abantu kana n'obwalwa kwamba jinsi bakapogola bakumi n'abantu ebasite bakapogola bakatengendo bakingirira abantu iyo balema bakingirira tebule mina zanere kenisi n'obwalwa nomba bale bakuma abantu abakwera kinabeva era jinsi bale bakumina n'empozi bale boma jinsi kirelezi.
Okay, twatotera mkwe.
Twatotera.
All right. Okay, twala mwaska. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that is Mr. Kalenga from Bala. Pick two more calls so that we have.
You have to remind me of the issues
yes,
in case.
I will remind you of all the issues that our callers are bringing on the table for you to respond on. Let me pick this call. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening. All right. What I would advise that when you're calling in the program, make sure that you reduce the volume on your TV set or completely
switch it off. Yeah.
Your
The
TV
volume,
set off, so that we can get to have a smooth conversation. Hello, good evening. All right, we seem to have lost that caller. Let me try another caller so that Mr. Simba can respond. Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, who's on the line and where are you calling us from?
Okay.
Winter,
Ndifya wino mkwai mulishani. Okay, that's great. Yes.
Okay. TV.
Mkwai.
Nokuta mkondorola amashiwa asuma sana. Wasambira mochimorero tutunga kabira pye. Pamonga awekala chalo. Mwebati. Imbichi kutuwa cha bulimi. Bakitako. Bapushako sana utuakupero twingi. Ukitako impawa.
Yes.
Bafama.
Yes.
Batunga bakite fili. Kuchatuwa fulisha kolombo kwe wati. Tuwakwata kwe chakulie fingi. Usiakubika patebo. La totene wa winta mubanga.
Okay.
Babumba mtwaile no mpashi mkwete.
Mkwai.
Okay. Twatotera mkwai. Okay. Maybe perhaps you could respond to some of this, and then I can quickly get to another set of callers.
Yes.
Mr. Noah came through and just gave an advice to government that they should find means to arrest some of these challenges that the local people are going through. Mr. Kalenga was asking why there's a mass beating of people instead of the police protecting them. Yes. From Chinsali, it should be Mr. Chilufya. Mr. Winter came through and says,
Chilufya,
Mwanga from our Western Province, Rwanda district, comes to and says government should find means and ways to empower local farmers so that they can produce even more. Just quickly, respond to this and then we get to
in fact, the issue of the agriculture sector is the same as the gentleman from Rwanda. The promotion of the agriculture, and they are very right. The agriculture sector provides the best opportunity to boost the economy. Remember, I talked about dealing with arrears, domestic arrears. That includes the money owed to the agro dealers, okay, and also money owed to the transporters of our produce. And we also need to continue, and I believe this year, because of this crisis, we need to increase the allocation to FISIP so that we can encourage as much production of maize and other commodities such as rice, beans, wheat, all these. We need to have a specific stimulus for the agriculture sector because, with food, when you produce enough food, it relieves a lot of our problems. If we can get the price of billy meal back down to below 100, to at least 50, 60 kwacha, that will have a great impact because even us in the urban areas, the lower paid workers will be benefiting, you understand? So I think that is the key. And that is why I've been saying to the government that, look, bring together a task force that is just going to look at economic response. That's what that's what all the countries have done. Don't just have people talking about public health. We need an economic recovery task force that's going to look and say, okay, for the mining sector, what can we do to ensure at least they continue to operate and we can make sure we continue to get some revenue.
If we become serious as Zambia into, investing into agriculture, just give us an economic outlook of how the economy would look like and, the reality of, the impact that this will have, especially on an average Zambia.
Oh, it will have a great impact. You see, because agriculture, the bulk of our people live in the rural areas. And what do they depend on? Agriculture. So when you invest in agriculture, you are actually empowering a vast number of Zambians. Okay? And it doesn't cost much because there's always an income to agriculture. You understand me? There's always an income, And especially if you don't just promote maize, but you promote a number of other cash crops, cassava, beans, and all these. That will be good. Then secondly, what you do is you make sure that the roads from where the produce is coming from to connect to the markets are good. So the feeder roads and all these roads, the intercity roads are good. That way, it will be easy for the farmer to bring his goods to the market where the traders are to buy his goods. Then thirdly, you need to link primary agricultural production with value addition so that you can export value-added products. So instead of exporting maize, you export milli meal. You understand me? Yeah. Instead of exporting the bran, you produce stock feed and produce beef, pork, goat and other animals, and you export the actual beef because exporting a cat meat is much more value than exporting just a carcass, or exporting just the stock feed. You understand me? So there's a lot of opportunities, and you can actually create a strong economy out of that, and also employ a large number of these youngsters who are moving around aimlessly in the towns.
All right, let me pick another set of calls. Sasimumba. Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Yes, who's on the line and where are you calling us from?
I'm calling you from Chinsali.
Mr. Chilufya from Chinsali, give us your contribution, Mr. Chilufya.
Yes, I want to make my contribution.
Yeah.
Yes, what I was trying to say when I quote first, I was saying that the only way we can help our economy at this moment is agriculture.
Yes.
If you look where we are sitting, almost all our neighbors, we are able to supply them with
Yes.
food. Look at Tanzania. Tanzania, the type of soil which they have cannot be compared to us. So our soil potatoes, they are able to grow. Are able to grow watermelons, they are able to grow. Are able to grow rice, is able to grow.
Yeah.
Now, why should we continue importing potatoes from the Africa?
No.
Meanwhile, here we have the potential to produce those things.
All right, thank you so
How
much.
can our economy
Yeah.
improve when we are encouraging foreign things coming into our country?
All right, thank you so much for coming.
Supermarkets like Shoprite, it's us, the local farmers, who are supposed to supply them those
Yes,
things.
yes.
Because we are able to grow them.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you so much. All right, 0978594682. Very, profound contribution that Mr. Chibia.
We forgot to
makes.
respond to that gentleman about the police beating them.
Yes,
so
let's
we
just
should.
get another.
Yeah,
yes,
we
I'll remind
should
you.
remember.
Hello,
Yeah.
good evening.
Hello.
Who's on the line and where you calling us from?
Ndetule kufuna kumansa.
Mwaba nani?
Niwe Mrs. Mumba.
Mrs. Mumba.
Mubikeko SI.
Ashabla Mrs. Mumba.
Awe kwena nasanga ku program kanshira nomba inecho ningalanda kwa kululua COVID-19. Hello.
Yes. Trump.
Nga iliri ne batisa bafola na baba buteko bafola. Bule pitako kutuma institution twama arranging kuba unit finance bana nisani bagudu sero mule monese oba siko servant bale chula. Kanshi ubulwele bule fai kwa sembale ba siko servant nga baba lungira ko kyatabusia uko tesanya koko ichipoera munani mu mabanki mukakukoka pakuwesa chatulasi notu utompia bakongola pakuti babwese nga yakira moni bala batela penalty kanshi basiko servant bali chulire kine mu town mulemuna tikeni momo bale kongolo tusia baba lungire ko fikano no kudishini shishitatu kwani kumansa kuno na sanda peka sadi asipati hapa na kashamwane.
All right, it's good to get a contribution from Mrs. Mumba from Mansa right there. Paula. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening.
Hello?
Yes, who is on the line and where are you calling us from?
Yeah, I'm calling from Mongo, Mbewe.
Mr. Mbeo from Mongo.
Yes.
Please give us your contribution.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mbel.
You know, the issue here is that look at what Zimbabwe has done. They are giving food, right?
Yes.
There's a lockdown somewhere there. We are watching here, there was the BBC, we are watching it.
Yes.
But when they tell people that, you have to stay home, but what are they going to eat? Huh? So that issue, please, can you put it forward so that those people can actually get it right and straight?
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please, can you do that?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Let me just get my last caller for this particular set of calls, and then thereafter you respond. Mr. Simumba. Hello. Good evening. Hello. Good evening. Hello. Good evening. Hello. All right. Yes, who's on the line and where are you calling us from?
Hello?
Yes,
Hello.
who's on the line and where are you calling us from? All right, so maybe I'll pick another set of calls.
Yes.
Let's quickly, you get to respond to some of
Let me respond to that gentleman, Mr. Kalenga. He sounded very upset on this issue of police beating them.
Yeah.
I think the Minister of Home Affairs, Honorable Kampiongo, stated very clearly, there is no one above the law, not even the policemen themselves.
Yeah.
So the police are not allowed to mete out corporal punishment.
He brings out an economic aspect that is probably, I think you didn't pick it. He says, where can they, for example, open bars and let the policemen be there,
Yes.
so that as we are drinking, they're able to protect us, but they're beating us.
Yes, that's, I know.
But don't you think, probably, let's maybe discuss that a little bit
Yeah.
more. Don't you think that is a good idea? Because bars have been closed,
Yes.
and the reason they've been closed is for us at least to be able to arrest this COVID-19.
I understand,
Because,
yes.
bars,
Yeah.
there's that physical contact.
Yeah.
But it's saying, look, what if policemen are there while we're drinking?
Yeah.
Don't you think that is better as opposed to, when they find us drinking, they beat us? Well, what is better? And do you agree with him?
No, I don't agree with him on the aspect that why don't they open and then police are there watching us. I think we could have, for the bars and restaurants, for the restaurants, at least there was a bit of a breather in that restaurants can still sell takeaway. Yeah, okay, they can still sell takeaway. I'll give you an example what happened in Sierra Leone during Ebola. We had a curfew from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., right? However, from morning, from let's say 10 to up to 5 p.m., restaurants and bars were allowed, restaurants basically, but you know, most restaurants have bars, were allowed to open. However, they were given strict instructions on the number of people that can be in there. So you could not be over a certain number. So if the capacity of your restaurant is 100 people, you could not be more than 50 in the restaurant. You had to make sure you maintain, you know, a social distance. And also, each restaurant and bar had to have a washing facility, you know, where you wash your hands. They had to have hand sanitizer, you know, and with Ebola, you didn't need to wear a mask because it was not airborne, you know, but yeah, so you had to make sure you had that. So we can do that also in Zambia. We can look at ways of saying, okay, because I tell you, for the bars and restaurants, it's a huge problem, and the lodges.
Let us be practical, right? And I'll ask you a very important question. If you were in the shoes of His Excellency, Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, what would you have done different?
What I would have done different, if I was in his shoes, was I would have put the issue of the economy at the forefront. Because the only reason why a country like Zambia cannot do a complete... Yeah, wait. Yeah. The only reason why we cannot do what the Americans have done is we cannot afford it. Economically, if we did what the kind of lockdown that the US has done, more people would die from malnutrition. Remember that even as we are speaking today, malnutrition kills more Zambians than COVID-19. Malaria kills more Zambians than COVID-19. Okay? Yes, there is a public health crisis, right? We have an issue, we have to deal with it. It's a pandemic. However, and this is something the Minister of Finance reiterated, even the President himself said, we cannot afford to sacrifice the economy, the whole economy, at the hands of this pandemic. That is why, so far, what the government has done has been, I think, the right approach, okay? Because they have not gone overboard, all right, in terms of restrictions. We still have shopping malls open, okay? The only thing is that the tourism sector and the bars and restaurants are the most heavily hit economically. Now, they just need to have some patience. This is why it's important now. What the president has done and what the government has done in the initial phase, I think has been the best that can be done in the circumstances that we're in. Now what we need is to move now to the next level, okay? Because now we have from the public health perspective, we have a better understanding of how this coronavirus is going in Zambia, how it's moving, the way it's spreading. We are able to contain it. We need to move to the next phase and say, how do we ensure that we are ready if this thing becomes worse, right? And it means total lockdown. Yeah. You tell me, my brother, how many Zambians will be able to stay even just 5 days at home, no income?
I love the fact that you've brought in a very genuine answer to this conversation, because the argument that sparkled, especially across political parties, I'll give you an example of the United Party for National Development. The leader of the UPND suggested that Zambia should go on a lockdown. Yeah. The leader of the National Democratic Congress, suggested that the country should go on a lockdown. Yeah. The leader of the National Restoration Party, Mr. Stephen Nyarenda, suggested that the country should go on a lockdown. Yeah. And you're saying that the current measures and the current direction in which we're headed into as a country, as far as we are concerned, the economic measures that the President of Patriotic Front and the current leader of our country has put in place are commendable. Yes. And that is the direction we should head.
I disagree with all those opposition leaders who are talking about total lockdown. They don't understand the dynamics, okay? And if you look, apart from Chishimba Kambwili, the rest of them have never been in government. I worked in the Sierra Leone government as an advisor during Ebola. I was stuck in my house for 3 months during Ebola, okay? I was there at the height of Ebola. When all foreigners were running away, I was there with the late critical sponsor, former ZRA Commissioner General. He was advisor to the National Revenue Authority in Sierra Leone. I was advisor to the Ministry of Trade and Industry. Both of us, we were living in the same house, the two of us, and we were working for the same organization, DFID, the UK Development Agency, okay? And I can tell you, the whole time through Ebola, and Ebola killed more people and was more dangerous. Ebola, you catch it, 3 days you are dead, okay? But none of those countries, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Ghana, Nigeria, ever implemented a total lockdown.
You seem to be placing premium on the economy as opposed to people that run as opposed to the drivers of the economy, which are people. Don't you think it's easy to resuscitate the economy?
No.
But not easy to resuscitate people.
You can. To resuscitate a dead economy is very difficult. More people will die.
Yes,
more people will die from a dead economy, my friend. Look, right now, Donald Trump, the president of America, why is he crying for the states to reopen? Because he can see ahead the dangers in terms of the economy and how to get it back up. Yes, lives of people matter, right? China, in fighting coronavirus, had to take a very drastic and decisive decision to allow a number of Chinese to die in order to save the rest of the economy and the rest of the people. Italy, same thing. They had to take drastic decisions.
You've commended President Lungu for, the steps he's taking to ensure that, relief is provided in mitigating the COVID-19. Now, in his address on Friday, he said, like you've put it rightly, that the country needs to continue running. We can't just suspend everything. We expected him to, probably suspend, to lift up maybe the ban on bars and restaurants and gyms and all these others. He suspended. He lifted a ban on churches. What economic impact does the reopening of churches have on the economy?
It does nothing. Actually, for me, that was where he made a mistake. And you've seen the subsequent statements issued by State House and others. They've drawn back from that. That, for me, was a mistake. I don't understand how it got into his speech. It was a mistake. If he was really concerned about the effects on the economy, he should have first considered opening up these other, establishments, such as the bars and the restaurants, and maybe put some restrictions on. You could even restrict on timing. For example, you can say, look, the bars should open at this time, close by this time. Restaurants should open this time, close by this time. They should not be. Every restaurant should have a temperature, check. They should have this. You can impose certain guidelines and restrictions, but we'll wait and see. Maybe another week from now, when the government reviews the measures so far carried out. Most Zambians rejected the church thing.
My director tells me that there's about 4 minutes remaining. Now the price of crude oil has dropped from about $70 per barrel in December 2019 to about 20% per barrel. As of
less
today.
than it was. It's going to come back to $20 now.
Yes,
and
this
because it had gone negative.
Yes, and this represents about 70% drop. There were calls by the public, for the Energy Regulation Board to reduce the pump price. However, the last ERB, issued a statement. The last time ERB issued a statement, they said that they couldn't reduce the price of crude oil because of the depreciation of the kwacha. How justifiable is this really?
It is. Well, it is justifiable in the sense that, yes, the kwacha has depreciated quite a lot. So what we need to do is to check to see the level of depreciation compared to the level of decline. But secondly, remember that oil is bought usually 3 to 6 months ahead. Yes. So the fuel that we have right now is fuel which was bought at the old price. So if the price of oil sustains for the next 3-4 months at that level, definitely the ERB will need to reduce the price of fuel. But the other problem we have with the price of fuel for Zambia is that we've got too many middlemen and too many costs in between. That include the excise duties and all these taxes that we put on the fuel.
For the last question, let me accommodate this caller.
Okay.
Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
You happen to be our last caller. What is your, question to Mr. Samumba, or your contribution, really?
I just want to thank Mr.
Thank you. Thank you.
But and I want just to find out what is he doing to help the government.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
He should come up. He has a sound mind, so he should come in the forefront. He should be one of the players there to help the government to implement some of the things that he's talking about.
Thank you so much. You happen to be our last caller. We
Thank
greatly
you.
appreciate.
Thank you. We appreciate that. I didn't catch his name, but he
I
says...
also missed his name. In your concluding remarks, as you're giving, a response to what is scam, you also give us your concluding remarks. Regarding what we're talking about.
Yeah. No, firstly, I used to work for the government myself. I'm a civil servant. That was my first job. Dr. Walya Ngandu is a personal friend of mine, but he's the Minister of Finance. He knows where to find me. I have no problem providing any support that the government requires. I'm also a member of the Economics Association of Zambia. And the Economics Association of Zambia, we are always providing support and advice to the government, so there's no problem. And through here, they listen, they catch something, and they'll take it up. I do submit as well to the Ministry of Finance every budget, some ideas, so that is it. So in terms of my concluding remarks, again, I want to appeal to His Excellency the President that, look, we now need to move to economic recovery phase, okay? All our friends, that's what they're doing. South Africa has just started softening the restrictions. Why? Because they now, you see, look, first of all, from the public health side, you first of all need to understand, okay, the trend. Do you understand me? And with public health, you cannot copy and paste. You cannot look at America and say, oh, because this happened in America, it will happen to Zambia. No, it doesn't work like that. You look at your own trends. Who is being affected most? How is it affecting those who are old, those who are young, those who have, we've got people who've got HIV, for example. We've got cancer patients. It affects them differently from somebody who's sound and healthy. You understand me? So from the public health side, Dr. Chitalu Chidufi and his team, they now have a better idea of how this thing is moving. You understand? So now, we now need the economic side, the economic side to begin to say, okay, start looking at scenarios. If this thing lasts for another 3 months, what does it mean? Okay? If it lasts 6 months, what does it mean? What are we going to do? What kind of resources do we need? For example, if this thing carries on up to the time we are about to start planting, how are we going to distribute fertilizer, seed to all these farmers around? Yeah? Because we may end up with a waste crisis, a food crisis. So this is why I keep saying, we have to get back to the economic issues, because we've got economic issues is life and death, just like public health is life and death. So we really need to be very clear in our minds and have a strategy and a plan and cost it, and then go to the IMF and any other donors. The UK government is very willing to work with us. Even the Chinese are willing to work with us to help us. Okay? But you have to go with a plan and say, look, this is what we think is the impact. These are the scenarios. And this is the money we need for this. If this happens, this happens. That's how we move forward.
Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we're discussing the impact of the coronavirus on our economy. My guest has been Mr. Trevor Simumba, an economic and trade expert. My name is Andrew Mansa. I will see you next week, Sunday, same time, same place, on behalf of Dalsen. Good night.